The best tripod shots versus the very best stabilizer shots. I'm going to teach you the difference between these shots starting right now. The four main tripod shots are the pan, the tilt, the zoom, and the still shot. The four main stabilizer shots are the track shot, the crane shot, the dolly shot, and also the still shot. Which camera shots are better? The ones on a stabilizer or the ones on a tripod? We're going to battle them against one another to find out right now. Battle number one, the pan versus the track. Panning is on a fixed point and it rotates left and right on the Z-axis, changing its camera angles as the object moves through its space. The space in front, known as negative space, is there to help direct your audience to know what movement is taking place. It's there to help direct your audience forward. Panning, the pros. The pan can help direct the audience's attention in a certain direction, usually by following an object. It can also help deliver important bits of information to the audience by simply panning to them. And it's pretty easy to use and fairly cheap to master when using a tripod. Panning, the cons. The pan is stuck on a fixed point or in a fixed location, and it can only lead or trail an object. This camera shot can't go along with the object in motion, leaving it stuck behind. If you don't have a specific reason for using a pan to help tell your story, it can look kind of generic and cheap. If you don't have a very good tripod, or if you haven't tried practicing with this shot, you can get some shaky camera movements as well. Tracking is not stationary on a tripod, like the pan. It's a parallel movement keeping the character or object in frame while being moved over distance. Tracking is used to keep the same camera angle of the person that you are filming, usually in a parallel movement. The track is meant to go against the grain to rip up that two-dimensional effect and help show foreground, midground, and background. Here, the camera itself acts as the foreground movement. Then we have the character in the midground moving, which is in contrast to the background, giving us a lot of motion, adding to a 3D effect. Unlike panning, you don't need to keep space in front of the object. You can center them up in the scene. Tracking is not stationary on a tripod like the pan. It's a parallel movement, keeping the character or object in frame while being moved over distance. Tracking, the pros. The track is not on a fixed location. It can move along with the object, allowing for great motion and action to be captured. It also allows for the audience to feel like they are there with the character on his journey. Tracking, the cons. Tracking shots, done properly, are expensive and they can be time-consuming. Gimbals can offer steady footage for the tracking motion, but they can also range all the way up into the thousands of dollars. There are cheap Steadicams out there that can help you capture tracking shots, but it takes a lot of time to master using, so the footage isn't shaky. You can build your own tracks, but then again, we're talking a lot of time and practice. Battle number two, the tilt versus the crane. The tilt shot, like the pan shot, is also a fixed point, but it rotates up and down on the y-axis, changing its camera angle on the object as it goes up and down. The tilt is used often when the camera operator wants to display the vertical significance of an object, such as a skyscraper. Tilt down can be used to signify the depth of a place or to portray how high up someone or something is, such as being on the edge of a really tall building. Tilting, the pros. The tilt can also help direct the audience's attention in a certain direction, usually by showing the height or the depth of the object in scene. It can also help deliver important bits of information to the audience by simply tilting up or down to them. Like the pan, the tilt is pretty easy to use and fairly cheap to master when using a tripod. Tilting, the cons. The tilt, like the pan, is also on a fixed point and it can only direct your attention up or down. This camera shot can't go along with the object in motion, leaving it stuck in its fixed location. And like the pan, if you don't have a specific reason for tilting up or down to help tell your story, it can look kind of generic and possibly cheap. The crane shot also isn't bound to a fixed position. It too is meant to break the two-dimensional look by adding movement in between the foreground, midground, and background. It's also used to help reveal the scene that the character is in. It's ideal for revealing the environment, whether it's the buildings or trees. The crane shot helps you get a higher up view of the scene. The crane shot, the pros. The crane, like the track, is not stuck on a fixed point. It can move up in a parallel motion to help reveal more of the scene, or it can move down in a parallel motion to focus on less of the scene. This parallel motion of the foreground, midground, and background gives a great three-dimensional feel to the scene, allowing for some great action to be captured. The crane shot. The cons. Crane shots, done properly, are expensive. Even using a stabilizer such as a 3-axis gimbal to help set off the cost of buying an entire crane is still expensive. If you are using a gimbal or a Steadicam to pull off the crane shot, you can only reach so high with a camera with your arm. Battle number 3, the zoom shot versus the dolly shot. The zoom shot, like the pan and tilt, is on a fixed point. A zoom is not a physical movement of the camera. It's a magnification of an object or reduction of an object that is being recorded. When you zoom in on an object, you are increasing its importance in the story. When you zoom out on an object, you are decreasing its importance within the story. Zooming, the pros. The zoom allows the filmmaker to focus in on certain objects to help portray their story to their audience. The camera operator can even decrease an object's importance to the overall story by simply zooming out of the object. It's also great to be able to capture footage that is really far away from where it's being recorded. Zooming, the cons. If you don't know what you're doing, zooms can almost scream to the audience that you are an amateur. You'll see a lot of homemade movies using all sorts of unnecessary zooms. Try to stay away from them unless you're using a zoom for a really good purpose, like zooming in to capture an emotion, or zooming out to show how small something truly is. The dolly shot. The dolly shot, like the track and the crane, is not bound on a fixed point. The dolly shot allows the camera to travel freely going backwards or forwards on the x-axis. The dolly shot, the pros. The dolly out or the dolly in adds awesome motion to a scene that can make the audience feel like they are there in the movie. They're riding along with the character on the adventure. The dolly shot, the cons. Like the track and the crane shots, the dolly shots can be expensive. Again, you might have to make your own track, which can take a lot of time. Or you'll need to invest into a Steadicam or a gimbal, which can also be time-consuming to master and expensive. Battle number 4, the still shot versus the still shot. The still shot on a tripod is just that. It's a camera in a still position set up on a tripod. It's there to capture the natural motion within the scene. The still shot on a tripod. The pros. The still shot can offer you perfect stabilization without any shakiness. All you have to do is set it up on a tripod and let it be. It's also cheap and easy to master. The still shot on a tripod. The cons. These shots can be very boring if they're dragged out for too long. The still shot on a stabilizer is a camera recording on a stabilizer in a still as possible situation. It can help offer a bit of smooth movement to the scene to help break up that stagnation or the stillness of the scene, similar to the natural subtle movements of the human head and eyes. The still shot on a stabilizer. The pros. It can help produce some natural movement to try to offset that mundane stillness of a shot. With a cheap Steadicam, you can actually film more scenes faster than constantly moving around and resetting up a tripod. The still shot on a stabilizer. The cons. The only con that I can actually think of for this shot is that the camera operator might accidentally add too much natural motion and it takes away from the scene. The motion, not filmed properly, could also be shaky. There really are no winners or losers here. Each shot has its purpose in creative filmmaking. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is for you to ask yourself, why are you using a specific shot? Once you have answered that specific question, master the technique on how to capture it. Well, there you have it, the best tripod shots versus the very best stabilizer shots. Try using a variety of these shots in your next video, and I look forward to seeing some of the results. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for the next James Gang tutorial.
Please move on to the following assimilation tutorial. Begin. Now